The unexplained has often fascinated people. What could be out there? Come with us as we explore unreal encounters. The Loch Ness Monster. My name is Paul Hintz, and I'm here with Lindsay Barr, and we're talking about the Loch Ness Monster today for the encounters. What do you know about the Loch Ness Monster as going into this?
I mean, aside from all of the ways that it has captured the imagination of people across the world, with such masterpiece films as The Water Horse and Scooby-Doo Meets the Loch Ness Monster.
Nothing.
You know, I mean, I've kind of been fascinated with it for a long time. You know, I watched, like, Monster Hunter videos, like TV shows on History Channel as a kid, and, you know, saw all the pictures and all the theories and things, but that was a long time ago. But
Well, we're going to talk about the pictures today, and some of them are, well, they're intriguing. Loch Ness is a body of water in the Scottish Highlands. The name Loch Ness comes from the River Ness that flows into it. Being the second deepest loch in Scotland, just behind Loch Moor, at 755 feet at its deepest point. The loch is also quite murky due to the high peat content in the surrounding soil, making visibility quite low in the loch itself. Loch Ness on the surface is just a normal lake like any other, and were it not for what people believe lies beneath, many of us would probably not know its name. Nicknamed Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster is what excites many people about the loch in our modern day, but the legend of this monster goes back to the 6th century AD. A man named Saint Columba was walking down the side of the River Ness. As he walked up the river, he came across a group of men. As he got closer, he saw that they were burying a man who had been horribly injured. When Columba confronted the men, they told him the fantastic tale. They claimed the man had been attacked by a water beast, and the beast had dragged the man under and killed him despite the other men trying to rescue him. So I guess my question on that is, do you think they murdered him and just made up the water beast?
possibly. I mean, that's very likely. And I think it's interesting here in the wording that it says that the man is horribly injured, but it doesn't say that the man is dead. And immediately as you were reading that, I thought, they're burying a man alive? Like, the water beast killed him, but he is still, like, help.
It's not the 6th century account that they were reading from.
Okay, so he was dead. He was dead.
Pretty sure he was dead. Okay. That's just my creative writing. So he was dead.
Okay.
They're burying a dead man, but he was brutally he's not just a dead dude. He's brutally killed dead dude. But this saint walked up on these guys and they were like, the water beast attacked him.
And Columba's like,
it's like,
really? Fascinating. I'll go tell other people about this water beast.
What do you think this guy did next? Because we have more of this story.
Oh, he did? We have more. Okay, well, he probably, I don't know. I mean, trying to imagine myself in this situation in the 6th century.
6th?
Mind you.
What were people doing in the 6th century?
Well, I'd probably be some sort of lowly milkmaid on the River Ness. And yeah, I'd probably see this horrible scene, and if they told me there was a water beast, I would be curious to know more about what the water beast looked like, maybe. And, I don't know what I would do in that situation. I've never been in that situation personally, so.
It's, shall we find out what he does next? Not wanting to just take the men's word for it, Saint Columba decided he needed to test and see if this monster was indeed real. He set one of his followers, Louis Mokomin, into the river to swim across and try and draw the monster out. To their surprise, a beast emerged and swam towards him. Being a holy man, Saint Columba made the sign of a cross and told the beast to go no further. Miraculously, the beast turned away and fled. So what do you like the idea of, hey, a water beast you say?
Hey,
let's send my servant into
servant
the
of mine,
water.
go be bait. This man was horribly injured, but you'll be fine.
What was his plan if the dude went out there and the beast killed him before he got to see it?
He did kind of, the beast emerged and he's just like, away, fell creature.
Yeah.
And it
worked.
apparently worked.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 6th century account, so
yes.
don't think we have the exact. This is all
Yes.
legends and hearsay, but
possibly mythologized, but.
I also think it's interesting in this part of the Loch Ness Monster, like at this point in the Loch Ness mythos that we've discovered, the beast is in the river, not the lake.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the idea of, it originated in the river, or was there like a crocodile in this river? I didn't do the research, but I don't think crocodiles live in England.
No, but it could have been like some rich man like imported it or something. Because you know how like people would like order pineapples to look fancy?
But did rich men know about crocodiles in the 6th century?
Not sure.
Because I feel like, when did Europe discover Africa, I guess is the question.
Well, discover. When did they realize they had neighbors?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have that information off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Obviously I didn't do that much into it, but I think it's interesting that it's in the river, not out
It makes you wonder,
lake.
Like where the source of the river is, and if it does connect to an ocean. If it is a plesiosaur in Loch Ness, this could have been the point where it went, down the river into the loch and then got stuck there.
But a plesiosaur is...
I mean, maybe it was just so little at the time that it could go through the river, but then it got too big to go back.
Maybe. Are plesiosaurs river dwellers? I don't think we know that answer, probably.
No, yeah.
Maybe we do.
I'm just spitting theories.
In 1933, a man named Hugh Gray took his camera and dog to the loch to take some pictures. What he photographed instead was a disturbance in the water. Many believe this is the first recorded photograph of the monster. Though, many also believe that this picture merely depicts another animal, like an otter or a swan, or some even suggest it may have been Hugh's dog that he brought that day. I have for you. I should have printed this out, but I put it on my phone.
Picture?
So here's the picture. So this is the picture that Hugh Gray took of the Loch Ness Monster initially. So some people have said many things. Some people are like, it's just a disturbance in the water. Some people said, you've got like a sea otter here.
Yeah, it kind of does look like an otter on his back.
Some people have said this looks like the dog's face.
Does it?
Like the eyeballs and the nose and like a dog ear.
It's a very exaggerated
holding a
dog
stick.
face. Oh, that does look like a dog holding a stick.
And if you kind of zoom up, it's like a dog swimming with a stick. So yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah, that really does look like a dog with a stick in the water.
Super believable.
Yeah. Also, why do all of these photos of cryptids have to be so low quality? I mean, I know this is 1933, but like every single picture of the Loch Ness Monster is grainy and obscured.
I mean, if it was clear enough, we'd either have proof that there was a Loch Ness Monster or not. Yep. So this is just, honestly...
This looks like a dog to me.
We keep doing this, it's going to be par for the course on all cryptids have that sort of picture.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a better Bigfoot picture, but I somehow doubt it.
It's not just Nessie.
Only 1 year later, the most famous photograph would capture the imagination of thousands for years to come, and cement Nessie in the public's eye. The surgeon's photograph, as it has come to be known, was allegedly taken by Robert Kenneth Wilson. Wilson was sitting on the side of the loch when he looked out and saw a creature with a long neck extending out of the water. He grabbed his camera and snapped 4 pictures. With that, the public was introduced to Nessie. So now we've arrived at like the famous picture of
the neck,
Nessie. So
that's kind of where the...
have that one too on here. So this is our like famous Nessie picture. Yes. So that is the like the pinnacle of what people think of as Nessie. And it's kind of funny, and I think before, and this was researching this, looking at it going, okay, we had like these early pictures and early encounters. None of them ever described it as like long neck and bodied, and then suddenly we had this picture, and now that is all we think about when we think about Nessie.
It's a plesiosaur.
It's a plesiosaur. I love plesiosaurs.
Actually looking at that picture just now, again, it almost looks like, because people have speculated that it's like a piece of driftwood or whatever. It almost looks like someone's swimming and they're like doing a stroke.
Like what's that called?
Like some sort of like their arms
like
up
like forward
this,
stroke
and they're
clearly I'm not a swimmer.
They're swimming.
Yeah, it kind of does. There's people have come up with a lot of explanations for it. Let me actually, hold on, let me turn the page. Trying to remember. Oh, yeah, so let's continue, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
This picture would stand for years as proof of a monster in the depths of the loch. Even with this evidence, however, there were still some that were skeptical. They pointed out the cropping of the image made it look much larger than it was. Some claimed it could be anything from a bird to an otter. It wasn't until 1994 that we would hear an explanation of the photo. Christian Sperling was a sculpture specialist. He had recently been caught using hippo feet to create fake footprints. He claimed to have gathered a group of people together, and with a toy submarine and materials from his local Woolsworth, they created the monster. After photographing the monster, they sold it to a friend who passed it along till it was sold to the papers and published. Some discredit this story as not actually happening, but nevertheless it has led many to believe this photograph was not in fact a monster, but a prank. So, years later, this guy comes out and says, I made this picture up. Do you believe him?
I don't know. Wait, so when was the original picture taken? When was that again?
I think that was pretty... Well, when was that? That's really bad of me. How did I not put that in the script?
Was it like in the 60s or like
Hang on.
something or other?
I did a bunch of... Where's my research?
Stand by, folks.
Surgeon's photograph was 1934.
1934.
So in 1934, so...
And then 1994.
Yeah, so like 1994, so...
Yeah. So this is 60 years later.
This is like 60 years later. This guy's like, oh, I made that up, by the way.
Because also, like, how old was this guy when he made that claim? Like, was he, super old by that point?
He was super old at this point.
And just the guilt was too much for him, and he just wanted to clear his conscience before he died? Or, like... I'm just amazed that he had hippo feet.
Yeah, this guy had hippo feet and was trying to make fake foot. What does that happen that you're like... Was he wearing the hippo feet or like had them in his hands and like people showed up and were like, what are you doing?
I don't know. It could be like the moonshiner like cow hoof shoes that they would wear to disguise their footprints. So
well, that's what I'm envisioning. Like slippers made of hippo
feet. Just really big like moon shoe like hippo feet.
Him just trying to like, I don't know, like people walk up like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I think about this because we've made films and people walk up and are like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, we're making a film.
And they're like,
but this is like, great. If we're talking like the 1930s, this dude's actually
tromping around.
I don't know.
Hippo feet.
Hold on, I gotta pull this up because
it's like, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? Nothing. No, it's nothing at all.
Like, he's just a liar. He didn't actually fake the photo, so the photo's real, but he's a liar because.
He's a liar either way, folks. Like
we can't have anything nice in this world.
He made a fake photograph, or he lied about the photograph that's actually real.
Someone's a liar.
And could still, whether or not, like, it could still not be an actual monster.
Neither
even
of them.
If he didn't create the photograph.
And even if it's fake, it's not that much. And it's such a fun photograph, but at the same time, you're like, this tells us nothing. And like you bring up the whole, it's like grainy and.
Yeah. And it's just like...
And it doesn't...
It's just a shape.
Like, make sense. Many people in our modern days are skeptical of stories or even photographs, since we all know how easy it is to alter a photograph. So, in 2018, a group of researchers from the universities of Otago, Copenhagen, Hull, and the Highlands and the Islands decided to do a more conclusive test. They did a DNA analysis of the loch and attempted to see if there was any unidentified DNA in Loch Ness. What do you think of DNA in the loch?
I mean, there's a lot in there. Like...
Yeah, well, like, how much material are you pulling out? And honestly, when I was reading this, like, how do you DNA test...
A lake.
A lake. Like, do you just take a sample of the lake and test it? Or do you, like...
I guess. I mean, I
take a lot of samples of the lake and test them?
I mean, if this thing is as big as, it's purported to be... And, it's been swimming around the lake for however long. Like, I guess,
there should be, like, a lot of dead skin particles.
Yeah,
but does
like that.
DNA exist on those? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know that much about DNA testing, so...
Science people in the comments, let us know.
Let us know if you are a DNA tester person and know how they test a lake.
Yeah. Is that plausible or not?
Can you test a lake? Because otherwise this just means nothing.
So. The
results were finally published in 2019 with no evidence of any odd DNA being present in the loch. However, the study found a large amount of eel DNA, According to lead researcher Professor Noel Gemmell, this could either mean really large eels in the loch or a lot of really small eels. Unfortunately, this means the loch most likely does not have any large reptiles in it. So,
I'm okay with that.
the jury's back. There's no weird DNA in Loch Ness.
It's just eels.
Just a lot of eels.
A lot.
So apparently, if you go swimming in Loch Ness, you don't have to worry about the Loch Ness Monster. You just gotta worry about eels.
Yeah.
Lots.
And they've got those second jaws.
Yeah, and I wonder what kind of eels. Like, are they moray? They're probably not moray eels. Those are like ocean eels, right?
Well,
or are they like the garden eels, like the ones that like...
Well, yeah, I feel like morays are like freshwater eels, but I could be totally wrong about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know a shocking little about eels.
Yeah.
After going through the stories, let us examine some of the theories of what the Loch Ness Monster could be. Our first theory is that the Loch Ness Monster is misidentified animals. Loch Ness has no shortage of other animals, and as stated before, many believe the photographs taken of the loch are otters or waterfowl. Some even believe sightings of a monster could be a giant eel of sorts due to the high concentration of eel DNA. So what do you think? Misidentified animals?
That's most likely.
See, that kind of is the general consensus.
Like that first picture, like once you pointed it out to me, I was like, yeah,
like
that very much looks like a yellow lab just happily swimming back with a stick.
With a stick. And I think the second one, some people have pointed out, it's like it just could be like a swan or a goose.
Yeah, I mean,
and especially when you
silhouette.
see the zoomed out version, you're like, okay, it's like
yeah.
tiny little thing, probably like a waterfowl or something.
Mm-hmm. It could even be a black swan, which is why it has the silhouette, because
be.
those are rare but not impossible.
I mean, I guess the question is, does Loch Ness have swans?
Maybe.
But I don't know. We don't know the answer to that question.
We don't know anything.
We just know what the Loch Ness Monster is about, not anything else about Loch Ness. That wasn't relevant. The next theory is that most, if not all, of the sightings of Nessie are hoaxes. Many point at the story around the surgeon's photograph and other stories as hoaxes where people made it up for publicity or as a prank. It is easy to Photoshop images, and as such, many say we cannot believe any of this evidence showing Nessie to be real. So what do you think? Do you think that, like, all photographs are...
Like, purposefully a hoax?
Purposefully, I guess, what would you post on, or, like, posit on the idea that some or all of the photographs are hoaxes? Like,
right.
I mean, we talk about, like, the guy's story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that it's more likely these are hoaxes, or people took a picture of like a weird animal and then submitted it to the news because it looked cool?
I don't know. I mean, so we got the first guy who probably took a picture of his dog, because he went to the lake with his camera and his dog to take pictures.
And it does look like a dog if you look at it the right way.
Yeah. And I was a skeptic before about the dog, but it's very much
we turn you over to the dog.
Yeah, you turned me over to the dog side.
It took me a couple days to think it was a dog, hey.
Powers of persuasion. But, we don't really know how these stories, like, start to circulate. Like, he could have submitted it to the news and said, like, oh, it's a monster, that I saw.
Yeah.
Even though, it looks very clearly like his dog. Or it could have been that, like, he was showing it to someone, and they were like, oh, that kind of looks like a monster, and then they started spreading that story. We don't know.
Yeah, for me, I don't know if I buy the idea of all of them being hoaxes. Yeah. Maybe the surgeon's photograph's a hoax if the guy is to be believed on his story.
If he's actually telling the truth.
But the first one I kind of look at and go, like, why was he taking a... I guess if he was trying to, like, set it up, he kind of, like, was like, oh, this was my dog. Mm-hmm. And he just submitted the picture as evidence, I guess. So maybe that could be considered a hoax, because he turned in a photograph. He's like, I took a picture of my dog, but I got this instead. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that. Yeah. And that brings us to our last theory, that the Loch Ness Monster is some unknown animal. Many still hold on to the belief that a large plesiosaur or large salamander is the monster of the lake. This seems to be discredited due to the DNA tests done at the loch, but many claim that it may have existed, only to have died out with the shifting climate. What do you think of that? That it is that the Loch Ness Monster is a monster, whether it be a giant salamander or a...
I'm a lover of fantasy, and, the Water Horse movie is fun. And, You know, it made many young children cry. But
True.
I think that it just seems a little too far-fetched for me.
The idea, I love the idea of a plesiosaur just chilling in this lake.
Yeah, in Scotland.
But
no one's really actually seen it, and there's no DNA evidence that it's actually there.
There's no proof that it's there. It's such an interesting, like, idea of, oh, there's this animal that does not exist anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And to be fair, that happens.
It does.
But it happens with very small, like, birds.
Yeah, or like the little pupfish that are in that like little puddle in California or something.
Yeah, but not massive plesiosaur, like dinosaur era fish.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of one of those where you're like, oh. A lot of people, and this is just the funny thing that I thought was, people point out that maybe climate change and the shifting of the planet has killed them off, and that's why our modern tests have not found them. What do you think of the idea of that?
Well, I mean, I feel like if it did die, you know, and sank to the bottom, I mean, you think about, like, there's a high concentration of peat in the lake, and if you think about peat bogs, and you think about bog bodies, and how they, like, get, like, just sunken in there and preserved. Yeah. But I feel like it's too big. I don't know. I mean, maybe there is a plesiosaur bog mummy in the
bottom of Loch Ness.
But I don't know. I'm not convinced.
I mean, and this honestly goes for all of the cryptids, but the idea of there's one of it. Just one. And that's always tricky to me, because, like, how is it still alive after all these years?
It is immortal.
Whereas, like, the Loch Ness Monster, some people are like, oh, maybe there's multiple. And it's like, well, if there's multiple, how are we not finding them?
Yeah, where is it?
Did it just, like, for whatever reason, some people, and this is not including the theories because it's kind of outlandish, but the idea of one having gotten, like, frozen or preserved and hibernated for, like, millions of years.
Like a mammoth?
To, like, kind of thing, to, like, come back out. And once again, there have been prehistoric creatures that have been revived after we, like, melted them out of ice. But they were worms, not a very complicated organism like a plesiosaur. So I don't.
Maybe it's just a very large prehistoric worm.
Maybe. A really big worm.
It's a simple organism, but really big.
The Loch Ness Monster has inspired countless stories, and all that being said, whether or not there is a creature in Loch Ness that fits those descriptions, it has become a permanent fixture in our culture. Nessie has fascinated many and encouraged them to learn and discover. Can we really be sure that there are not fantastical beasts out there? Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you all so much for watching this far. If you like this, make sure you give us a subscribe. There's also plenty more content on our channel if you go take a look. We've got short films, we've got behind-the-scenes videos, whatever you're interested in. And we will see you in the next video. Stay curious.
And back to the loch with you, Nessie.